I'm ready. Well, good evening. We'll go ahead and get started tonight. We're starting out with a Board of Finance meeting, and we have election of officers, and then I think we'll turn it over to Dr. Dykle to conclude it. So we'll go ahead and get it started. I think we have officers, president, and secretary.
I move to nominate Mark Pavey as president and Tony Hall as secretary of the Finance Board.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Kraft. Any other nominations? If not, all in favor? All right, be 6-0. Thank you. Okay, Dr. Dykle. Where do you go? I know.
Okay. This is the time that we have to conduct a public hearing on our investments, and so this is the continuation of the Board of Finance meeting. Just to let you know, Indiana Code 5-13-7-7 requires that the investment officer shall annually make a written report that summarizes the school corporation's investments during the previous year. At this time, we invest the money in treasury bills. That's basically where we're getting our best bet right now, which is currently paying the highest amount per our investment cash management agreement that we have with your community bank. Over the past couple of years, we have earned the following interest. In 2009, $83,603. 2010, $164,386. 2011, $166,607. 2012, $161,127. 2013, $170,867. And last year, we earned $164,822. So that's our investment report to let you know.
Okay.
Any questions?
All right. Any public, I think we'll open up this time for any public comments. If not, we'll go ahead and conclude the meeting.
Good job, Tom.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
And we've got a few minutes. We have a 7:05 advertised meeting, so
Have to wait 3
we have
minutes.
to wait till 7:05? We're at 7:05?
Let's do it.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started with the regular meeting, or special meeting today, and we call to order, so please show everyone except for Mr. White here. And join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes tonight?
No, sir.
Okay. No changes. Have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. Thank you, Ms. Zolman. Questions, comments? All in favor? Thank you. Be 6-0. Dr. Mellon, any public comments on agenda items?
No, sir, not tonight.
All right, thank you. Next item is the board planning. We have a couple of updates. The first one is the multicultural advisory update.
Board, very exciting. We've got a very dedicated group of community citizens that meet in our advisory. It's part of our strategic plan. We meet 4 times a year. We just held our a recent meeting. Nancy is kind enough to participate in that group and actively participate. Really appreciate that. Where we are, just to give you a quick idea, is the first goal is we want to give the district input and support on how to serve the diverse group of children in Greater Clark. So that's a multicultural advisory goal. And a couple of things. Ruby Payne is a renowned expert in this area in the country. She has a book that has just recently been updated, and our committee talked about the fact that we need to perhaps get that book back out in the hands of our educators, and so we're developing a plan of attack to do that. I recently went online and purchased the book myself, the e-book, just to go through it myself and make sure it's still as effective as it's been in the past, and it is. So we want to make sure that our staff understand that students who come from poverty, it's important to be sensitive and aware of those students. And most teachers, most educators come from a middle-class environment and background. And when you deal with a population that maybe is not as fortunate financially, it's important that, which we do have in the school corporation, it's important our teachers can really have a better understanding and awareness and sensitivity to those students. So that's a big part of what the Multicultural Advisory is going to try to do is help our teachers and support our teachers in that respect. The other thing that we are going to try to put in place, and you know, this needs to be discussed with our Teachers Association and so on, but we are proposing, the advisory is proposing home visits for next school year for kindergarten, 6th grade, and 9th grade students. In a previous district I was in, we did this for every student in our district, 10,000 plus students, and teachers got out and administrators and so on. Everyone got out before school started and visited their homes, said hello, gave them a little welcome package, you know, we're looking forward to having you in school. Just the overall logistics of this whole thing, the advisory thought it was a great idea, but to maybe better manage it on the first year, let's focus on our kids coming to school for the first time, those kindergarten students, and those kids transitioning into our middle schools and high schools. And so we'll be putting a plan together through the advisory, and we'll be bringing that back forward to you eventually to make you fully aware of those details, and we'll also be working and discussing that with our Teachers Association as well. The last part, second goal, is to develop a recruiting process for, you know, how do we get more individuals of color in our school corporation from a employee standpoint. And the one thing that we're going to continue to work hard. Our HR department, Donna Mullins, our director, we get out, go to fairs, we try to identify, we do what we can. But first of all, there are not a lot of those individuals out there. And when they are, they're given opportunities to go to larger urban settings for more money. And so we thought that really what we need to focus on is growing our own. And we have a lot of great kids in our own school system that would be outstanding as they go to college and then come back. To hire them, they'd be great role models, and that's true for all of our students, but in particular, if we're trying to improve, increase the number of individuals of color, then we're just going to maybe have to work harder to identify and grow our own and try to bring them back in and be part of our family as employees. So those are the three main items that I think we spent most of our time talking about.
Can I say something?
Yes, absolutely.
Did you not say we have children from 32 different countries that speak 32 different languages as their first language? 32 countries. I think that's, I was not aware that we had that many countries represented. And we were throwing around some fun facts, and we thought, if they're younger children and they speak a different language and they're learning English, wouldn't it be fun for them to just teach their class how to say hello, goodbye, or whatever? Just a few things in their native language, so that we would have kids coming out of Greater Clark that knew a lot more than they thought they knew. It's just a wonderful committee. I appreciate your letting me be on there.
Thank you, Board.
All right. Any further questions for Dr. Mellon? And Ms. Kraft, we do appreciate you serving as our representative. Thank you. Okay, next item is the radio TV program implementation. So I think
Do you mind if I just do a quick starting point here? We have a big presentation here for you, and Board, I think you know very well how I feel about all of this. We're very fortunate in the opportunity that's presented itself, and we've worked hard to make that happen. And so this tonight is just really a beginning point, but it's significant, and for all of our school corporation, which you'll hear more. I don't want to steal Travis's thunder, but I appreciate Travis, Tim Dench, I appreciate Covert Hawkins, Tom Deichel. A lot of work has gone into this, and tonight it's a matter of showing you and proposing this to you in hopes that perhaps a couple of weeks from now, February 3rd, we could bring it back and ask for your recommend and approval. So turn it over to Travis.
Yeah, thank you. Board, as Dr. Mellon said, it is very exciting and have a lot of information. Try to go slow and we'll try to answer any questions. Covert Hawkins is here, Hal and Jamie are here, and want to thank them for all of their help. Mr. Dench is here. Principal Straight has been a lot of help. Dr. Dykle, and then Mr. Hobgood as well. So a lot of people have come together, Dr. Mellon, of course, to get these figures put together. Thought I'd give you just a kind of a brief update, just a quick update. Dr. Mellon probably came to me in November and said, hey, I need you to get this thing up and running. And I said, okay, what do you want? And he said, I want us on the air by January. I said, okay, it's November. He said, yeah, I want you on the air by January. So we went up and we met with Principal Straight and Mr. Dench, and the old studio was, it was in pretty disarray. And Mr. Dench, along with the students in the classes, did a wonderful job of cleaning out a lot of the cables and those types of things. And then Mr. Hobgood came in and really did a complete overhaul of the room. If you'll remember, the old WJHS had the old Wave 3, I think it was, desk that they were using, and it was kind of in disrepair. So we removed all of that. We had a new paint job inside. We've laid new carpet, new lights, new electric. Believe it or not, I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but they turned the lights on at the circuit breaker panel. So we were able to get a jump off that, and they actually have switches and dimmers and all of that to where we can kind of make it modern. Wow. And kids aren't playing in the circuit panel. So I was feeling better already. So we really did a lot of work, and Mr. Dench did a great job. And if you've seen WJHS, what we have now is the ability. The kids are actually broadcasting music, kind of in preparation for what we hope is coming with the radio stations. But they're actually playing music, several thousand songs that they have the capabilities of. But they're playing music on the television station on air. But while they're taking class, there are also cameras in there. So the picture that you will see while they're in class are the kids working as, if you would, DJs. Kind of simulcasting. That's probably not the exact word there, Mr. Dench, but that's what they're doing, is they're playing the music in preparation to be on the radio station, and at the same time they're getting the benefits of actually filming the television, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So a whole lot of good work there, and probably one of the things that's really exciting is our building trades department. We said we needed a new desk, and you should see the work that Mike Brown and the kids did to create a desk for the kids in radio and TV. So just a huge collaboration up there under Mrs. Straight, Mr. Dench, and Mr. Brown's direction. So appreciate that. So we made the January date. We were about a week behind, but board, you'll remember you approved us to make a significant purchase, and we were able to purchase a lot of that equipment. We were waiting on that for the 2015 year to switch over, so our funds were available. But we're up on air, and it's really exciting. So if you haven't, please take a look at that, because really some first-class stuff that you'll see on there. So where do we go as we move forward? You know, we are in a position where we could be one of the few school corporations where there are actually 2 radio stations within the corporation, as well as a TV station. And there are very few corporations in the state, if any, where that's a possibility. So keeping that in mind, really, we are starting from the ground up. And we think we've got a great opportunity here in front of us to build or construct 2 radio stations, as well as updating 2 TV stations, both at Jeffersonville and at Charlestown, and then also creating a satellite radio station, TV station at New Washington that we'll be able to broadcast. We'll use the Charlestown radio station, and then if there are some things there that we can do with TV, we'll certainly include that with those kids as well. So we've got a great opportunity. We've got an awesome design that is really cool. Mr. Dench and Covert Hawkins, just kudos to those guys, but wanted to kind of give you the figures first and kind of let you know what these figures represent, and then we do have some renderings here. So what I've done throughout this PowerPoint board is talked about Jeffersonville High School, what it's going to cost, Charlestown High School, what it's going to cost, and then the final slide will break down all 3 of the high schools for the total cost. And at the end, Dr. Dykle is going to let you know thoughts on how we're going to finance this and ultimately pay for this. The initial construction cost for Jeffersonville High School, for the radio, it will be a classroom, 2 stations, as well as a TV control room. you'll see there is $884,000. And that looks high when you compare it to Charlestown High School, but I want to show you where it's at in the school because it is a really cool concept. That construction is where we will be able to do the radio station. There will be the TV control station, but we need a TV studio. So you'll see there $100,000 for the TV studio. That's where we'll actually have the cameras, and that's converting a classroom at Jeffersonville High School into a TV studio. And you think $100,000? Well, you have to have high ceilings and the lights and those types of things to create that studio. So we've got that, and any type of room renovations, and then there are the architectural fees for Jeffersonville High School. Charlestown High School is about $500,000 less. It's not because it's less of a studio, it's because the location is already there, and it's really just revamping the current location. They're using a location for storage that we will be able to turn into the same type of operation, a radio station with the 2 rooms, the TV control, and then we're going to take an art room and make that the TV studio, and you'll see those numbers there match, and then the architect fees. So that's what we've got. Now, this is the kind of the layout of Jeffersonville High School, and you'll see the 2 areas in red of where we're proposing it. The one on Johnson Arena is where we'd like to put that TV station and the 2 radio classrooms, and actually make that the whole radio TV suite, if you will, in Johnson Arena. And we've got a rendering here that are the next 2 slides, and you will be able to overlook Johnson Arena on one side through the glass, so our kids can broadcast games on the radio and TV right there out of Johnson Arena. And then on the back side, it will have glass towards the auditorium so that we can broadcast plays, performances, and those types of things in the auditorium. And then you'll see to the right of the auditorium, the other red shaded area is the TV studio, and that's where we'll make kind of the home base, where we'll have the cameras and all that set up there for the studio. So I wanted to kind of share with you, that's the layout, that's the thinking. Now, go ahead, Renee, to the next one. Here's what's cool, we think. That's the rendering of what we would do on the side of Johnson Arena. We would lose a few bleacher sections, but you can see that is a 2-story construction area at the top with all those glasses. Those would be the radio stations as well as the TV control room. There will be some storage at the bottom, and we've also talked about the possibility of creating something at the top, a 3rd floor. This design, and Hal, Jamie, if I may speak, please jump in here, but this design also allows us to keep the crow's nest on each side and access to those, so we can use those if we need to. We use those for some of the spotlights and those different things. So we think just a super cool area in Johnson Arena where kids can see the games, we can broadcast the games, and really just kind of get a bird's eye view there. So we think that's really a cool concept. And then that's the back side, and that's the hallway that's right across from the auditorium, down in the commons area, if you will, at Jeffersonville High School. And that would give us the opportunity, again, to broadcast the events that would go on in the auditorium. As kids and the public would be walking by there, they would be able to look into the studio and see us live on air, and really think that we get a lot of traffic volume at games and at events for our kids, and think this would be a really cool concept. So really excited about that. Equally as excited at Charlestown High School, and what I mentioned earlier was there was already a room. If you'll see there's the arena, and we'll do the same type of concept there on the shaded side, which would be the radio TV studio. Same concept where we can look into the arena at Charlestown High School, and then the other side is the main spine that goes through Charlestown High School, and we'll be able to see that. A lot of foot traffic to watch our kids as they're working in there. And then the TV studio, as I mentioned, would be it's an art room that currently is not in use that we would be able to use as a TV studio. That's a rendering looking into the arena from Charlestown. You'll see those glass. And this obviously is a rendering. We talked about, probably need to put some of the school colors and paint it and label it, and all of that stuff is stuff that we would do later on. But to give you an idea of what it would look like. And then the back side, Renee, that would be the side that you would be walking down that spine, where you can see those would be the windows where we can see the kids on air, both on TV and radio. And again, we've got 2 radio stations, a radio station at Charlestown and a radio station to Jeff, and then they would share the TV station. So we would work through that. There's a tower construction that's involved in creating the radio stations. And board, I was not aware of this. I've learned a lot about radio and TV in the last couple of months, but they kept talking about a tower construction, and I knew that obviously radios needed a tower, but what I didn't realize is when you talk about tower construction, they mean just the tower. There's no antenna or transmitter. So you'll see two slides here. So this is the radio tower at Jeffersonville High School. And board, we've got a couple of different options. We need it to obviously be as high as we can, and we actually are bringing in a structural engineer in to evaluate this. Think that there's an opportunity possibly that we could put it on top of Jeffersonville High School, although I think we're kind of going back and forth, and if not, then we would have to do a self-supporting tower up at Jeffersonville High School. And we've got really a good location. I'm looking at Principal Strait. We walked it the other day, and I think it's a good location. If we have to put it on the ground, it'll be okay. It's over by the welding room and kind of off to the side. It's a door that's really not used a whole lot, and I think we can make that work, but certainly I think we would like to look at the roof first. In Charlestown, you're familiar with the Witten property. That's where we have the auto body campus program. And there's an area back there where we will put a standalone tower, and those are the construction costs there. And you'll see the $23,000 associated costs. There will actually be a building there because there's no outbuilding there to house the transmitter and some of the equipment, and I think it has to have the electricity and air conditioning and all of that. So that's why you see a cost there that's not associated with Jeff High. We think we can get the tower close enough to Jeff High without having to build a separate standalone building. So that's why there's a bit of a discrepancy with there. You'll see there's the antenna and the transmitter fees or cost, not fees, the cost, and those are estimates, and those would be installed. That's putting an antenna at the top of the tower, running the hard wires down, putting them into the transmitter so that then we could be on the air. This is equipment cost. This is the soft cost. This is furniture, the monitors, equipment, cameras, and you'll see there is a bit of a discrepancy here. Jeffersonville High School at $800,000 and Charlestown at a little over $1 million. Two reasons, honestly. The first one is in the way that we would try to finance this, and Dr. Dykle will talk about that. The construction cost at Jeffersonville High School is obviously $500,000 larger than Charlestown, so that's going to use some. There's a cap on what we can use. We can only, can I say, borrow $2 million. So there's a cap. It can't go over the $2 million. So because the construction cost is more at Jeffersonville High School, there's less money left over to pay for the equipment cost. We don't run into that problem at Charlestown High School, and again, Dr. Dykle will explain this. The other thing that Mr. Dench and I have talked about, or that he shared with me, is this would allow us to buy 2 sets of cameras at Charlestown High School, one that would be stationary in the studio, and the other one would be, we could take it to the ball games, we could take it to the auditorium, and you could move it, a little bit of less wear and tear on those equipment. And at Jeffersonville High School, that cost only has 1 set of cameras that we would have to move back and forth. So that's going to take us a little bit more time to set those up. But that's why those numbers are different. And you know, board, I think it's important, and I'm going to steal this from Mr. Dench because he's been a good teacher for the last month or 2 with me. He's been pretty patient, and he told me, he's got it on the board, if you were to walk in there, we do television, we don't do video. And I've walked in that classroom 1,000,000 times over the last month, and I'm not sure I knew what it meant until today. And he said, you give your buddy $25 and a camcorder and go film your Little League game, that's video. He said, you go over to Wave 3 and there's $100,000 cameras, that's television. And we're really preparing kids for television, not video. And it's an opportunity for careers and the pathways and the legacy that he has made. Just really a great opportunity. So I think it's important to know that this would be an opportunity of first-class television studio and a first-class radio studio at both of our high schools. So I think very excited about that. The new Washington satellite radio studio, that is equipment cost. There's a small room renovation that we would have to do, and then furniture, and that would allow our kids at New Washington to actually, and if I misspeak, Mr. Dench, but control the radio station on the Charlestown frequency. We would actually be able to be in New Washington, be on air, send it out through the Charlestown frequency, and be able to broadcast there. So we would open it up to some kids there at New Washington as well. Before we go to the last slide on the financial information, I think it's important we talk a little bit about this. This is an opportunity where we're not going to recoup all of this cost, obviously, but this is an opportunity where there is a little bit of the ability to recoup some funds. It's actually it's one of those few areas in education where we can actually make some money along the way. There's something called underwriting grants. I guess in regular TV it's called commercials, but the underwriting grants that we can sell. In talking with Mr. Dench, we think that anywhere between $25,000 and $35,000 at each site a year that we can bring in there. And then also this is a CTE program where we can get reimbursement from vocational funds at about $250 per kid. So, you know, if we have 150 to 180 kids, we'll get a little bit of money back that way. So I think it's important to kind of let you know the overall program. I think that was quick and it's a lot of big numbers, but you know, it is pretty straightforward. We're talking 2 radio stations, the TV station, the equipment, the TVs. We're really starting from ground zero, and I think it's exciting. Having been in the same district as Mr. Dench and seeing what type of programs that they have, the pride that the kids have, but it's the pride that the community it builds, and I just think we're in a wonderful opportunity to have great opportunities for our kids in our community. So certainly, Dr. Duckle, you want to talk financial, or if there are any questions, board, Dr. Mellon?
Just
anything
a
I forgot?
couple of comments real quick too. The locations. You may say, well, why are we doing that? And why are we spending that money to construct? Well, there are a couple reasons. The exposure is really important because the public, those are where the public comes in, whether it's our auditoriums or it's our gymnasiums, that's where a bunch of public comes in. And we're trying to generate those underwriting grants, and we want people to see how critical and vital and how active our kids are. So the exposure, the locations are important. Instead of burying these studios somewhere deep in the building, kids can't really see them, the public can't see them, and it's important there. But also from a wiring perspective, because what you want to try to do is locate these studios to minimize the amount of wires. Like if you want to have cameras in the gymnasiums or in the auditoriums, you're trying to minimize the distances that you have to run any wiring for cameras and other type, so you can more easily plug in your equipment and begin broadcasting. So that I think the locations in both cases help minimize the wiring expense. So, and you had some other.
I have a question about curriculum. This is an elective, obviously. Is it going to be for upperclassmen? How many classes, if I'm interested in it and I'm a freshman, when can I start taking it and how many credits can I get? And
It's a good question, and we've talked, Mr. Dench, you want to talk about that, because we're going to kind of phase it in.
I'm Tim Dench, ready to get instructor, by the way. It's set up right now for sophomores, juniors, and seniors.
Okay.
And as soon as we get it up and running, then we'll open it up to freshmen as well. So you can take it for 1 year or 4 years.
Okay.
Some students will come in and out of the program. And when it comes to curriculum, keep in mind that it's not just going in and playing on a bunch of fancy equipment. The writing skills drive everything. That's what it's all about. When you do something for me in a program, you may have your own radio show or TV show, but you've got to write a script. It's all about writing. People don't realize that. That's where you sneak the learning in. So they have to write, and they have to do research, and they have to be responsible, and know the broadcast law. So the curriculum reaches out throughout the whole school. It's not just this program.
I would think it would build self-confidence too, and public speaking, and there's a lot of things that go into that.
I can tell you there's several business groups already, just because of the fact that we are in Jeffersonville, Charlestown, New Washington, have already moved some of their events to our community based on just us being here.
Okay.
Well, as Mr. Hare said, Dr. Mellon gave him marching orders to have it up and running. Dr. Mellon gave me marching orders to find the money for it. Basically, we really only have one option. Capital projects is not the option that we would go with. I don't have enough money $3.5 million, $3.7 million in capital projects to find it. So we're going to have to issue those $2 million bonds, holding corporation bonds. We can do it up to $2 million per location. So that would be my suggestion, is that we go for $2 million, or whatever the final number will be for each of those schools, and then New Washington could be a separate one for $120,000 or whatever. So that would be the only option we really have to finance it.
A lot of upfront cost, and I get it, and I understand it, but keep in mind, the radio station that I started at when I was in high school is still in existence. I think they're year 50 or close to year 50. And I know New Albany Floyd, the radio station over there, I'm not sure, is it 60 years old or
Yes.
something like that? I mean, so when you have these initial big upfront costs, especially it's radio and television. So if the thought was, we had to work hard. The FCC came through, and we got the Jeffersonville frequency, but we had already made arrangements through an interlocal agreement with the city of Charlestown. So that's really where this whole thing was going to start. And if you remember, we were going to do radio only at Charlestown, and we were going to do the TV at Jeff, and that would have been fine. Well, then, when we were able to get the Jeff frequency and through the interlocal with the city of Charlestown, we had the Charlestown, and then you don't have that built-in conflict that some other districts have that have multiple high schools and only one station, where everyone has to share everything. And so I just think that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's a big investment up front, I get it, but in terms of the opportunities for our kids that will be career enhanced. I mean, there are kids that I went to school with that are working around the world in radio and television and have been highly successful. And so all those things that you talked about, Teresa, I mean, are so critical. And then we do have the ability to recoup some of these funds over the next 30, 40, 50 years through the underwriting grants and through CTE funds. So we may not get it all back, but we are at least able to recoup some of it. So I think it's really a good investment in our kids moving forward. And we know it's a big ticket item, though.
Will the kids be involved in the marketing part of it? So there's another piece.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, part of the state curriculum is we teach them to go out and approach adults in a business setting, so you're teaching those types of skills. I would be going to, for example, to the business classes, and I would teach a business course for that teacher on how to market. So yes, that is part of the curriculum that they'll be involved in. And also, this is the FCC only opens up licenses every 15 years or so, and you get it or you don't. And this is the first time in history that they've allowed people to have two licenses like this. So this is a very unique opportunity to kind of grab and run. 98.5 is Jeffersonville's frequency, 98.3 is Charlestown. That's very important because that puts us up in the commercial range. Years ago, we
Yeah.
got down 88
Yeah,
point whatever.
70s.
When people saw that, they knew you were a high school.
Or AM.
We're up there with everybody else, so they don't know. And unless they see us, they don't know. So that's huge. And it also, they're already talking about expanding frequency ranges a year or two down the road. If you're higher up, 98, you can carry out a little bit farther. So that would be our goal down the road.
The other thing, Board, call letters. That's going to be a challenge. I jumped on, they have a search function, and we have to identify our call letters. So, of course, I started with WJHS and WCHS and all those. Well, you wouldn't believe, we probably, in Jeffersonville, I think I've put 20 different combinations in. It's more challenging because these call letters are unique across the whole country. Pardon me. Pretty much east of the Mississippi, everything starts with W, and everything west of the Mississippi, the call letters start with K. So you can only have 4 letters. West of the Mississippi, they all start with K, and east of the Mississippi, they start with W. And so somehow we'll find a combination that works. WJHI was the only combination that I have found through all of my search, so Jeff High. But anyway, we'll figure that out.
I think this is very exciting. I think any investment we put into this will us reap rewards for not only the corporation, this part of the county, and our students and communities. And a little side note, the last couple of years I've had a chance to do some high school basketball games on the radio. And this year, I've had a chance to work with a former student of Mr. Dench, and he's gave nothing but high remarks. And this kid has went on, he's working for Terry Miner's radio station in Louisville, and Clay Abels told me to tell you, hey, and he said, you got the right man to run your program.
He's currently still in high school.
Is he still in high school?
Wow. Working with Terry Miners on groups, he's still in high school. Gets paid for it.
Yeah,
Key word.
gets paid.
Well, Dr. Mellon, just a couple of questions. A lot of upfront investment, obviously. What do we think it's going to take to sustain it past year one? I mean, into year two, year three? I mean, is it obviously not going to take this kind of investment? But
No.
just,
Financial operating costs, to be honest with you. Tim, do you want to address that?
What you're looking at, you have to pay royalty fees and licensing fees to play the music. And we want to stream so that when people leave our community, they can still tie into our community. So, y'all may move, or your children may move, they can still listen to stuff here in the community by streaming. So we have a few of those licenses. You have to buy some updated music on occasion, batteries, tapes, those sorts of things. So your cost, once you're set up, is negligible. Travel expenses, if kids go out to a ball game, things like that. So you're not looking at a whole lot of money from that point on. To replace things as they go, maybe break or something like that, you can handle that. And I've done that at other places. The initial cost is what's tough.
When I was managing that same radio station where I worked as a student, we were pretty much self-sustaining. We raised our funds, and then we paid those licensing fees out of our own budget. So those underwriting grants, we bring those dollars in, we would pay all of that, and we in fact paid for the renovation of our whole studio out of our own funds. So I think for the most part, this is your investment in moving forward. I think for the most part, the station will be able to bring in the revenue needed to pay whatever expenses.
well, Mr. Dench, also, I know we have the Big Ten Network. Are we going to have the Hoosier Hills Conference Network as well, or?
Actually, we're working on something similar.
Yeah.
That's right. The last place I was at, we went almost 10 years and never had to have board money. To give you an idea. But once you're up, you are sustained.
So we think that what the students bring in and then the advertising will be able to sustain it.
There's also opportunities where people see what you do, and business community, and people like to give to people who are successful. And once we're successful, things will come into us that way as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I just have a question about the roof at Jeffersonville High School. If we're going to put something on the roof, the roof is not in real good shape.
Well, first of all, we know we have to do work on the roof anyway. We've known that above that auditorium. So, and whether the structure, the high school in which I attended and I was the manager of, our tower was on top of the building. And it was a smaller tower and was smaller in terms of its width and also didn't have to be as high. And it worked. It had to have guy wires and so on, but it worked. If that can be done at Jeff High, then that saves significantly on the tower cost. That 170-foot tower at Charlestown, that's a big, expensive investment, and it's self-supporting structure. So we'll have to at least, if the roof can work, if we can do the roof the right way, and if we can support it, it would save us money. But if the structural engineer says there's no way, then we have the other option, to put it on the ground level.
I was just concerned if
Yes.
we need to fix the roof before we try to
Yes,
do
we
something
do.
like that.
I agree,
Okay.
100%.
Do we already have instructors for Charlestown and New Washington?
That's the other thing. When we hired Mr. Dench, and I'd heard only great things about him, and we're proud to have him as part of our team, I told him all along that I wanted him to be, he's the guy in charge of this radio TV operation. We needed someone with his level of experience and ability. We got the right person. But we also at the time didn't know exactly what we were going to end up with. We didn't realize we were going to end up with 2 radio stations, the ability to have 2 TV, and a 3rd radio studio in Washington. So we will have to look at hiring another individual that will come in, and my hope is that Mr. Dench has been in this business a long time and will have the ability to help us locate the right individual who will not only support the Charlestown, New Washington area on a full-time basis, but then also work really well with Mr. Dench.
I've already started interviewing some people. Just for that.
All right, Board, well, a lot to think. I think we're talking to February 3rd. We'll bring this back for a vote, so please, if you have any questions, make sure you get in touch with Dr. Mellon. So,
Thank you.
all right, thank you. I think Ms. Lewis is going to take us through some policy review, criminal history, and Neola update.
That's correct, and good evening to each of you. The first thing that we're going to start with is and it's really not a review of the policy, it's a review of the concept of how we're making changes and additions to our voluntary policy or protocols for when we have volunteers that come in and want to do services with our kiddos. Anything from somebody that wants to come in and read on a weekly basis to our students, or down to persons that want to volunteer to be coaching assistants or to work with our athletic teams or even our student theater teams. So we've been talking about what a protocol should be, and for background searches on anybody that comes into our buildings and works with our children. And as you know, now state law requires that we do background searches on anyone that we employ, and we have different types of background searches. Some of them can be like a limited criminal background check, and that just is a local check. I have Donna Mullins here if you need any details on the exact types of searches. And then another one is called an expanded check, and that's when it kind of goes nationwide. And in both situations, we always look at the sex offender registry to make sure that we don't have kiddos working with persons that are on our sex offender list. So we sent out we discussed this with the building administrators, the principals, at our meeting in December before the winter break. And then when we came back together for our first meeting in January, we provided them with information on what the protocol would be that we will work based on your agreement with how we've kind of set out this protocol. We'll work it into a policy, and we will bring it to you all for consideration in February. And the policy will be a Neola format. We've located a couple of policies in Neola so we don't recreate a wheel. And but the protocols is that anyone that comes in to work as a volunteer, first and foremost, has to complete a form that lists, their prior addresses, their names, their ages, dates of birth, and then the types of background checks. If they're going to go on an overnight field trip, they have to have an expanded background check. School day field trips, a limited background. And basically, we're talking about doing a limited on school day field trips because they're not given exclusive supervision over children. And a lot of times on overnight field trips, they would have a group to exclusively have control and custody of. When engaging in regular and continuing contact with the students, that's an expanded background check. All volunteer coaches, any type of coach that's in a volunteer capacity, has to have an expanded background check. The types of association with our students that would not require a background check would be an occasional lunch visit by the parents or grandparents that come in. If we have Grandparents' Day, we're not going to ask for a background check on a grandparent because they would be working specifically with their child during that time. Helpers at an occasional classroom party, unless they're responsible for some type of supervision of students. And then if that were to happen, then they'd have to have a limited. But if they're just coming in to be like a room parent for one event, then we won't require. Also, persons that attend public events at the schools, they're not required to have a background check unless they're going to be responsible for supervision of students, and then a limited would be required. And, we kind of define and expanded as a national criminal history check along with a search of the National Sex Offender Registry. Limited is the local criminal history check along with a National Sex Offender Registry review. Cost, because that's always an issue, of both the limited and expanded searches for volunteers, we will pick up and pay for that cost. You know, we thought somebody's willing to come in and spend their time to be a volunteer, to work with the school corporation, it's kind of hard to turn around and then ask them to pay the cost for a limited or an expanded search. So also the HR department created a form, and we had it converted not only to English but also to Spanish. That form was sent out today to the building principals and their administrative staff to use when they have persons coming in wanting to volunteer. They have to complete that form. They have to send it to the HR department. The HR department will implement the background search process, and then the HR department will release the approval back to them before we have the volunteers starting. So the buildings are going to have to do a little planning on their needs for their volunteers, but, you know, the law says we're not insurers of children's safety, but we want to do our best effort to make sure we have a safe environment for kiddos to come, and that's making sure that people that work with our kids in these capacities have been appropriately considered before they are placed with our kiddos. And also, you know, we talked about the fact that, well, you know, if I have 3 kiddos, am I going to have to fill out this form in all 3 schools? And am I going to have a background check, you know, 3 different times? This is kind of crazy. So our HR department, and I've been working with Donna on this, they are going to develop and maintain a database. And then that data that will be inputted will allow the teachers, the principals, to go online and check to see who the volunteers are, and if they've already had a background check during the frame of time that we're going to require the background checks, they won't have to have those redone. And then HR will go back to the principal and let them know that that person has clearance to begin. So that's kind of what we're talking about as far as the parameters for developing the policy, but we wanted to let you all know kind of what we were thinking about. Certainly, I'll be happy to take your thoughts this evening, or if you want to shoot them to me in an email format, we'll put them together. Anything else, Dr. Mellon?
Good.
Sandy, I just have a question about the dispersal of these requirements. How are we going to handle, how are we going to ensure that, and maybe this is a question for you, Dr. Mellon, but through whatever, our email system, professional development, zero period, whatever it is, how are we going to make sure all the way down to our lay coaches that they understand that they're not supposed to be having anybody around our kids who has not completed this process?
I'll, basically, our principals are responsible for everyone who's associated with their buildings. And so it'll be essential that we work with them to make sure that it's clearly communicated through their staff, through their parents. This is how we are going to do business. And so I think that's that's probably the best way to do it, is those principals are in charge of their buildings and they're responsible. They know the different groups. They know the field trips. They know all the different aspects and elements. So we'll make sure it gets there. They'll be responsible, and we'll hopefully, we'll support them in that process too, but that's how we'll get it done.
And our athletic directors.
Yes. Yeah, well, principals, yes.
Is there a limit on the amount of volunteer coaches or volunteer in a building that we're going to have per building? Let's just say there's a soccer coach at Jeff High that wants to have 10 volunteer coaches. Greater Clark going to pay that bill to have that check, or should Jeff High Athletic Department, like after 2 volunteers, you're responsible? If you want to allow that coach to have this many people on staff, that's your responsibility.
I think that's a good point. I think that's something that we can talk about internally here to bring back for you in the future. Is it would be my hope that it would always be a reasonable amount of volunteers, but I know how things can go. So it probably would be helpful to have some specific guidelines to maximize our volunteer, especially in that athletic arena. Good point.
Sandy, what's the life on one of those checks? Is it a year, 2 years, 5 years? Do we know? 10 years?
10 years. It's 10
Okay.
years.
Okay.
10-year. See, that's what the challenge is, to be quite honest with you, because the law requires when we hire someone that they go through that expanded process when they're going to be our employee. But if something happens in a person's life that, 5 years down the road or whatever, I mean, it only requires it on the initial hire. It's not like we have to go back and redo this every 10 years or whatever, at least that's, so that's, right now, it's the initial hire, and it's that initial, but from a volunteer perspective, again, once they're in our system, for the most part, I think, we don't want to keep causing more expense to ourselves unless there's reason to believe that we need to go back through with those volunteers. But at least the very first time, we'll make sure we do that expanded check on those individuals that are directly connected to students on a continuous basis.
And that's why we'll have the database, so that when we get the forms in, we might get a form in each year for volunteers, and they may be the same, but HR will be able to go through their database and compare the information. And if we've already got a check, and it's within that 10-year window of not having to recheck, then we'll be able to certify them pretty quickly. Right, Don? Is that right?
The actual criminal history goes back.
Oh, the criminal history
Oh.
goes back 10 years.
So if they're
Is there-
checking one in this year, the schools will be able to see if they are multiple schools.
Well, for that's the look-back period then, right? Okay, so is there
Is
the
there
one that we
a
do
time
this
limit?
year, how long is it good? Is there any deadline on that, or?
For the day that you do it,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
it could happen tomorrow.
right,
Yeah,
Okay.
and we don't redo on employees annually either.
right, okay.
If we have a reasonable suspicion, if something comes up and we have a reasonable suspicion to think that there could be a problem, then we will redo a check at that point
Gotcha.
in time.
Okay. Okay. All right, and you can take us through Neola now?
I will,
Okay.
yes. And like I said, we're going to work on incorporating our protocols into a Neola policy on volunteers, but just to kind of give you an update, and also just especially for background for Mrs. Zolman on what we've been doing with Neola, which is a system, a national system on policy development, and they have already done the work and the effort on putting the policies together, and so they kind of have a package deal that they provide to school corporations, and then you go through a process of reviewing different modules of policies and add or subtract from their language, and then develop your policies based on kind of a standard format. And we actually approved back in October of 2013 going with the Neola system, but we didn't have funds available in the 13-14 school year, no, the 12-13 school year.
Calendar year 13.
Calendar year 13, we didn't have funds available to make the payment, so we waited until January to actually contract with Neola of 2014, and then we finally received the Neola documents from the Neola entity in February, and we began the implementation process. And like I said, there's 10 different modules, and those are anything from human resources to business to instruction to curriculum to transportation. I mean, there's a variety of different modules that we go through. And one of the reasons we decided to go with this package policy program is because it has a keyword search that you can go online, and if you're looking for something, say on discipline, you can type in the word discipline, and any policy that we have through Neola that has discipline in it pulls it up for our ease and reference. Right now, it's pretty laborious process to try to go back and find specific policies on certain information. So that's certainly a benefit. Also, we get provided automatic federal and state guideline updates, and then we get administrative guidelines or protocols that go along with the policies we're developing to use, and then we get notices of mandatory policy updates based on legislative changes or additions. So that's a real, probably pays for itself for us to have that information. After we got the materials provided to us, we began, Pam Maples and I began to organize the policies into the different modules, to develop a list of team members that we're going to work on reviewing the policies, and to start scheduling the meetings. we had cabinet-level members that were assigned to lead the review of their applicable section, like Dr. Dykle in business, Donna Mullins in HR, instruction and curriculum, Travis, Kim, and Amy, you know, based on their applicable topics. I was working on board relations, and you all designated Tony Hall to be our designated board representative to serve on these review teams. And then we involved other team members for this review to include union designees from the GCEA, the teachers union, to work with us in that process. And we had the very first meeting this past August, and I can tell you, I think Mr. Hall will agree, it was a very long meeting because we realized very quickly that the policies are just not policies. They have options in each policy. So you have to sit down and consider those options, decide what may be best for the corporation, and then, you know, how we're going to incorporate them. So it was a lengthy process, and we really didn't get through one full module of policies, but we did make our best effort. And we decided that there had to be an easier way. About that time I retired, Tom Dykle went ahead and did his review with his group and agreed also it was tiresome and lengthy at its best. So we've come up with another suggestion that we're going to make, and Mr. Pavey made some of the suggestions to Dr. Mellon, and I kind of want to outline for you all just kind of where we are. And that's first and foremost because we got kind of bogged down on what our current policy says. You know, I mean, we'd look at a policy and then we'd go, well, what's our current policy say? Well, I mean, that's just nightmarish if you try to go back and compare our policy to the Neola policy and what language we like better one than the other. So we need to start with the premise that we are adopting Neola without consideration of our existing policies. Neola's done the work, they've put the language in, they've had their attorneys review it. I mean, lots of corporations in the state of Indiana are using Neola. So we're starting with the premise that we will adopt Neola based on our review of the options and selecting the options to best serve Greater Clark. And then if we have certain policies in our existing program, we will take those policies and set them aside. And then as we go through the adoption process, we will merge some of those into the Neola process. Now, when we put policies into the Neola program, there's an expense to Greater Clark. But if we believe that there's not a policy in Neola that covers it, and we want that policy in there, we will spend the money to get that policy incorporated in. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to go through each module, and I'm going to review them from a legal standpoint, and I'm going to mark the options that I think best suit the needs of the school corporation. Then we will go to the cabinet level members and applicable directors based on the module we're reviewing, and we will work to review those and to try to save their time. They'll already see what my recommendations are. If they disagree with those recommendations, we'll certainly meet as a group, discuss those issues, and then come to a consensus so that we're in a position to present it to you as a board for your review and your consideration. And then we'll bring a module at a time to the board for their review. And then if you have questions or concerns, at the same time we provide it to you for like scheduling of a first reading, we'll provide it to the teachers union so that they can look at it. And then Dr. Mellon, during that process, will schedule for a first review. We'll take it for a first reading, you know, where we say there's no changes. We're not asking for comments or changes unless you have some suggestions. We can meet collectively as a group in corporation discussion to review the first reading with the teachers union. We can also meet back again with our cabinet team to see if there's any reviews. And when I talk about that, certainly Mr. Hall will be a part of that initial process since he is your designee. And then if there's needs for a study session, like Mr. Hall thinks that you all believe we might need something more in this policy or we might need something less, we'll have that window from the first reading to the second reading to schedule those study sessions in there to look at what our recommendations are. And then, not earlier than 30 days after the first reading, we can schedule them for a second reading and for approval by the board. So the goal is to try to take a module, get it created and reviewed, and a consensus, and then bring it to you all for approval. Once you approve that section, we will ask you to rescind the policies that are school policies that are related to the topics. And they're not going to match up 50-50, but we'll make our best efforts on making that comparison. And then we'll go through that process, and it should be, we present, we review, we approve, we present while we're, the night we're approving, we're presenting, so it should be a fairly concise process, even though we're dealing with 10 different groups. And like I said, if we find policies that Greater Clark has that we think need to be incorporated, we'll be pulling those in at the same time. And then when we are down to, hopefully, the final reviews and approvals, we will do one final recommendation that you approve all of the modules that have been previously reviewed and approved, and to rescind in total the existing policies, and then we'll move forward with using of Neola. Does that kind of summarize it, Dr. Mellon?
Yes, it does.
Any questions?
Sandy, when we went through this before in another school corporation, we got involved in the policies to the point where we were trying to put administrative guidelines in the policies, which is what really slowed us down.
Right.
Once we figured that out,
Right.
the policy is fairly generic. It's the administrative guidelines that really makes it unique for our school corporation.
Right. Right.
And that was when the kind of lights went on. So what are we going to do about administrative guidelines?
Well, they provide us with sample administrative
Right.
guidelines also, and we will be incorporating those probably once we get through maybe the first 5 sets of modules, then we'll start pulling in and looking at the administrative guidelines. that
Using
kind
the
of-
same type of process?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sandy, I appreciate the time you put in. I just believe that, we've been paying for this for a year now, and I think we need to get it done.
Yeah, we will.
We need to quit talking about this is a plan, this is what we're going to do. And, I'm willing to meet and whatever it takes to get this done, because this is the nuts and bolts of our corporation, our policies. And I think it's going to be a great system, but we've got to get it, done. We've got to get started to get it done.
We agree completely.
Okay, it's a big job, so thank you. All right, next on the budget report is the student clinic update. So, Mr. Hare?
Yes, Board, just kind of go through this briefly. Continue to have huge success with the student clinics, both at Jeffersonville High School and Charlestown High School. Just to point out briefly, you'll see the previous month was 108 and down to 97. You think I thought things were going well, and how did we go down? If you remember, that was for December, and that was before winter recess, so that was a short month compared to the regular November. All of the numbers continue to make sense. We see a lot of strep throats, a lot of those labs, some upper respiratory infections, which we've treated with antibiotics. The consents, you've asked about that from month to month. Last year, we had a little over 400. At the end of December, we're up to a little over 600. So we have over 600 consents. So those continue to come in. We had a great meeting last week with the hospital and those folks. We'll continue to increase marketing. We came up with several different strategies that Teresa Stingle will be working with the hospital as we continue to market this through our elementaries, middles, and high. We will continue to increase our efforts on that. On a side note, at Jeffersonville High School, we had a student come down with abdominal pain. The nurse practitioner was able to do her exam and figure out that it was appendicitis, and did an emergency appendectomy. Help me here. And really one of the it's in the chemistry lab. Tom, you didn't know that? No, I was able to get him to.
Cost savings.
Able to get him to able to get him in the emergency room and have it done quickly before it ruptured. And just, kind of getting all kinds of stories, really positive comments coming out of all of the clinics. Kids are getting treated quicker, getting back to school or staying in school with the right treatment, and just continue to have great things. And board, I'll continue to point out, 70% of our kids that we're seeing that month had primary care physicians. So that means 30%, a little over 30 of our kids would not have been to a doctor because they don't have a primary care physician. So they were able to get treatment and be seen by one of our folks. So continue to really do some great things at both of those locations. Thanks.
Well, I just had one question. Looks like we had about a third of the kids that were coming from, I guess, other schools. I mean, looks like that, coming from, I guess, K through 8. How's it going on transportation? Are we doing a lot of that transportation?
We're
Are
not
they-
doing a lot of it. Actually, right now, and Mr. Paper, we're going to have to keep monitoring this. Right now, it's going pretty well with the parents, and I think part of it is because they don't have the consent signed. So they're taking the kids there to sign the consents. I think once we get that consent pool built, we may see that we'll have to transport some more. That was one of the things we were watching early on, where we got to transport a lot of kids. How were we going to free that? So far, it's going pretty well, and the parents seem to be doing a good job getting them there, but we do anticipate that might change as these consents go up.
Looks good. I was just curious about the
So far,
transportation.
so good.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Looks like Dr. Dykel, fund monitoring, FUND.
Got some good news, as you well are aware, go up a little bit higher. In the general fund, we ended our year at, I see my number here, $3,196,000 right here. That was our ending number, so I was real happy with that. Didn't have any surprises that we were worried about in the general fund, so we're starting 2015 with a almost a $2 million cash balance, so that's great. Okay, want to go to debt service? Okay. Debt service, when you look at that, we ended with $6,188,000, and the reason that's so high is because we have to get our money up front, because in January we have debt service payments that we have to make, and we also have some debt service payments in June. We won't get our money until the middle of June from our taxes, so that's why we have to get the money up front. So that was no problem. The tax caps, just let me tell you that we were projected to lose $3.1 million. We lost $2,988,000, I think was the final number. So it was down a little bit. So I was happy that it wasn't higher than $3.1 million, because that's where I was really worried about how that would affect us. In the pension debt, we ended up with whoops, you went too far, $399,000. You're too quick on the lever, which is fine. Capital projects, we were projecting like 1.3 million throughout most of the year. It was 1.1, but then we lost 766,000 to tax caps. If we didn't take the tax caps out of debt service and pension debt, this would have been closer to like 1.3 million. So we would have been in a negative at the end of the year in capital projects. So I'm happy that we ended the year with 353,000 in capital projects. Transportation operating fund, 0, but we were actually 162,000 in the red. And last board meeting, we came to you and asked to transfer that out, because technically, per Indiana code, we're not supposed to be in the red in any of our funds at the end of the year. So we asked permission to move it to the rainy day fund, which you gave us. Thank you very much for that. I don't look good in an orange jumpsuit. 2014 bus replacement fund, we ended up with $38,850. And Nancy, I want you to know we will buy 1 minibus.
Good, thank you.
I'm trying to replace them.
Yes.
It's going to be a while.
Ours
so.
are very tacky.
And then in the rainy day fund, we ended up with $3,366,000. So overall, all the funds did good except for transportation operating, and we really need to control our costs in transportation. So, any questions?
Okay, next item is the auction review.
Yeah, I'm happy about this one. First time I ever did an internet auction. So on December 15th, 2014, we held our first internet auction. The gross sales were $48,341 with a net of $41,256.90. The buses sold that we had between $1,550 and $2,950. Maintenance vehicles were sold between $525 to $5,000. Lawnmowers from $875 to $2,650. Food service mixers from $525 to $1,300, and engine stands from $6 to $25, just to name a few. Overall, we were very pleased with the results. Really didn't take a lot of our guys' effort time-wise to move it. That's one of the problems that we always have with an auction. It takes our maintenance guys so many hours, labor hours, just to move all that stuff from one facility to another facility, get it all stacked and ready to go, and then you have to have someone there to help them load it. These were more of the big ticket items, and it went really nice, so I'm going to want to do another internet auction. I love them. So that was just a report.
Very good.
Any questions?
Visa American Express yearly update?
Yeah. Over a year ago, you gave us permission to pay our invoices via American Express and Visa. Through the efforts of the business department, Margie Fetter, Carla Wunsch, and Joni Roberts, you didn't see my name in here. I just give them the ideas and they run with it. We paid over $5.1 million, almost $5.2 million through this program. We have received $3,295 from American Express, $55,046.48 from Visa, for a combined total of $58,341.48. Free money just by running it through Visa and American Express. In addition to this money, we were also able to maintain over $5.1 million in our bank account for 30 days longer during the course of the year, which generated an additional interest of a whole $3,114.77, bringing the grand total of $61,456.25. We also calculated we did not write 1,965 checks because we paid it through Visa. Multiply that times 48 cents for a stamp, we saved another $943.20. So now I'm up to, $62,300 for this program. We found that many vendors don't want to use American Express because of the high fees, so we are going to discontinue using. We didn't really run that much through American Express. We're going to discontinue our association with American Express and work with Visa, which is more readily acceptable. So, thank you.
Great job. Great job.
Oh, I tell the girls, and we get this money every month, where some places they'll only give it to you at the end of the year after 1 year. So
Right.
we get $2,000 to $3,000 a month, which is nice. So.
It's very, very good. Thank you. All right, next item is the Wellness Center first year review. Curious
Yes.
to hear this one.
Yeah, so am I. Our Wellness Center clinic, our Employee Wellness Center, opened for operation on January 13th, 2014. It started slowly based on patient visits per month and eventually gained acceptance among many members of our employee groups. During the course of the year, we had 3,878 visits, or a potential savings of $465,360 that didn't go to Humana, our insurance carrier, at $120 per visit. They distributed 6,019 generic medicines for a potential savings of $102,000 based on $17 a script, and performed 2,581 labs for a potential savings of $71,257 or $27.60 a lab. We actually spent $496,000 more for prescription drugs through Humana than what we spent last year, even though we distributed the 6,019 prescriptions. Drug costs are seeing some high increases, between 30 and 70% on name brand and generic. So it's good that we went with the clinic, which really helped. Here's a good thing. Our employees saved $96,950 in office copays and $60,190 in prescription copays. So that's $150,000, $156,000 that our employees saved by going to the clinic. We have, here's what really hurt us. We have 8 employees or dependents who have surpassed our $175,000 stop loss. So that means they have bills that have exceeded the $175,000. Normally you see 1 or 2, we had 8. We also had 4 more that were approaching the 175. So we potentially had upwards of 12 people. And remember, this review is from January 13th of 2014 to January 14th of 2015, but our clinical year goes until March 31st. So these numbers will go even a little bit higher until we get into April. So when we look at this, our medical costs actually increased over last year by $25,000. But Humana has written off $707,000 that has already exceeded the stop loss of the $175,000. So we actually have a net of about $688,000 using the clinic over last year. But then when you counterbalance that with the prescription drugs of $500,000 that we paid more last year in 14 versus 13, the net effect is we've saved about $160,000 using the clinic. Now, one of the things that we had to pay that we never had to pay before was the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. That's costing us over $9,000 a month to run that through our system. So there's $118,000 that we're going to have to add to our claims also. If we didn't have the clinic, we could look at our medical, instead of our medical and prescription costs being $7.6 million, it'd be closer to $10.2 million with everything that we had go through this year. In 2013, for example, we only had $110,000 in write-offs. This year, $707 so far, and it'll still grow because we're still every week until the end of March, we're still going to have these bills coming through. Other than that, clinic is doing good. We're meeting every other month to look at ways to broaden our scope with the clinic and our employees. We're going to have different contests. We're looking at biometrics that we may want to do with our employees. A lot of good things with the clinic. There's been a lot of great comments about people using the clinic. I know over Christmas I used it 3 times myself. And it saved me the $25 each time, so that was a good savings. Dr. Mellon, do you have anything to add to the clinic?
I think our utilization today, the report was 53% of our staff, our insured staff are using the clinic. So for the first year, I know Wellness for Life, our contractor, our vendor, is very pleased with that. That's higher than in most of their first-year clinics. But we really want to get it up to that 85, 90% or higher eventually, like some other school systems that have been with them for 2 or 3 years. So we're on a good track, good trajectory. And this was just a tough year with a bunch of very high medical expenses. So I wish we would have been able to actually have those claims lower, but under the circumstances, if we wouldn't have had the wellness center, as Dr. Dykle pointed out, the claims would have been significantly higher. So we still saved a lot of money.
And that one drug that we have, that's our highest cost drug, went up over $400 for a 30-day supply. So that just shows you how costs are going up.
Well, it's an employee satisfier as well. I mean, what's that worth, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So,
I
any
got to
questions?
I used the Wellness Center last week and was very much impressed with it. The only thing that I'd like to ask is, I called there to see if my husband could get his bus physical, and they don't do CDLs.
Not yet.
But that would be a really good thing for our bus people if we could get the CDLs there.
That's one of the things that we are looking at. Some of the ideas that we've kicked around is maybe using the clinic in place of, because they're open until 6 o'clock, in place of going to occupational health, where it costs more money for our workers' comp accidents, or if they're closed, then they go to the hospital, which is even more money. It's a possibility. What if we offer, such things as, we did flu shots this year through the clinic. That was a $7,500 hit for the serum. Also, we're looking at maybe doing physicals for students, sports physicals. That would help out a lot on parents. You know, maybe talk to the wellness center and see if we could open up like a Saturday and just have people come to the clinic on a Saturday and do sports physicals. That would help out parents tremendously that have our insurance.
I think Dr. Furr is just completing his certification requirements to conduct the CDL physicals. He just has had to go through some certification process. I think he's pretty close to having that completed. So that should happen hopefully soon here.
Because there are some new requirements coming on the CDLs.
It was a very nice building. I mean, it's very attractive and very pleasant people working there.
Thank you.
And hopefully we can expand our prescription offering, our generic prescription offering, and get more people to come to the clinic instead of going to their pharmacy. My son and daughter-in-law are mad at me because they're both pharmacists, but other than that.
All right, Dr. Dykle, thank you. Great report. Next up is Ms. Turner for the Airmark update.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to get everybody hungry tonight because it's full with pictures of good food and everything that we did during December. So I always like to put good pictures of our artwork on the front page. So this is a picture of our festive December salad bar over at Parkview, where they take great pride in the presentation of their food that we give to our kids. So that's just a look at our Christmas tree. And then I'm going to start off with telling you about our fuel promotion for December. This was probably one of our most popular items that we have incorporated into our menus. You'll see in the pictures here we had an Italian meatball flatbread, where it was topped with a roasted tomato spread, meatballs, red onions, and cheese. The very first week we sold around the very first day we sold about 100 of those sandwiches throughout our secondary schools, so the kids really enjoyed them. The second week that we did was a ranch chicken flatbread, kind of mimicked a little bit of a Subway or a Quiznos. Kids loved it. The very first day we sold about 250 flatbreads a piece in our secondary schools. Kids have been talking to us about when are we going to continue to bring those flatbread back all the time. So this was a very popular item that we were really excited about and had really good feedback from our kids on this item. And next, just kind of put food for thought of what, if you knew what we were doing. Came to you, I guess, in November, I believe it was. We opened the Head Start program at Pleasant Ridge Elementary. And if you remember, when I came to you for permission to contract the food with them, I promised you that we would not add any more labor, and we have held true with that. We're doing about 100 more meals per day out of Pleasant Ridge, just straight with the Head Start program with the same amount of labor. So my staff has worked really well with the Pleasant Ridge staff, and then also with the support of Principal Porter and Assistant Principal Mark Thompson. So we applaud our staff over there for providing food for the Head Start kids. And then just a little bit of information. Quarterly, Chuck, Amanda, and I, we always attend district meetings with our staff, and we meet there, we talk about things that are going, what best practices are going in other school buildings or school districts. If we come across some obstacles, maybe it's working in another building or another school corporation, so we're able to share those ideas and bring it back to help implement better things for us here at Greater Clark. We talk about employee safety and how we can continue to keep our employees safe. We talk weekly about safety briefs, and we have different topics, such as cuts and lacerations. With the snow out, we talked about safe walking into the building, so we're keeping our employees safe. The use of cut gloves, so as employees are using knives, they're not cutting themselves, and again, turning it into workers' comp. Then overall, we just brainstorm ideas, and we kind of get together as a group with my peers, and we talk about different promotions that are working in other school districts, and then we can use them here at Greater Clark as well. And the final Did You Know topic, I am proud to highlight Spring Hill Elementary and Parkwood Elementary, where those two elementaries, we are serving between 85% and 95% of our students on a daily breakfast for breakfast and lunch. Spring Hill, we do serve about 95% of our kids for both breakfast and lunch. So we're very confident that our kids are focused on education and they're not focused on hungry bellies throughout the day. Parkwood, we do about 85% at lunchtime, and we do a 91% participation at breakfast time. And again, that is, our kids are able to focus on what's going on in the classroom and fueling their body and their brains for the day. Once again, in our effort to continue to build our employee morale, our December Manager of the Month was Della Cox. She is our fairly new manager up at New Washington Middle High, and she has done a fantastic job. She was a cafeteria monitor, and we actually promoted her right into a manager position. She was kind of thrown into a pack of wolves, and she's learned on the job. She's asked a lot of questions. Her production has increased. She goes to the administration and asks of ways that she can better food ideas and presentations for our kids. And so working with Principal Ledbetter and Principal Hobson, they have really helped us to get what the kids want up at New Washington. And Della has done a great job. So we're really fortunate that Della came our way, and we're proud to announce her as December's Manager of the Month. Our Employee of the Month for December is Janet Lewis, and Janet has been with Greater Clark County for 26 years. And I think that's just a proud testament of what we have and the people that we have within our school district, not just in food service, but 26-year employee. She's a veteran, but she still continues to learn every single day. She's open to changes, as you know, that food world is ever changing. And she was recently promoted to a cook's position, and Janet hit it head on, and she wasn't afraid of any task that was put in front of her. She works directly with the kids on a daily basis to make sure that she's giving the kids what they want. The quality of her food that she is putting out is at the highest rankings in the kids' eyes. And then just a fun bit about her is we call her Miss Cookie, and that's just something that we know that we're always going to get a smile out of Miss Cookie, and that's Janet Lewis. So again, we're proud to have an Employee of the Month from Janet Lewis out of Spring Hill Elementary. Just some noteworthy pictures around the district. On the left-hand side, this was our Christmas meal that we were able to provide for our kids right before Christmas break. We served ham, macaroni and cheese, kind of a home-style meal in hopes that the kids that were less fortunate to maybe not get a holiday meal at home, they at least got a great meal here at school, filled with all their favorite things. On the right-hand side is a picture at New Washington Elementary School. We, we worked with our manager, Angela Baker, up there, and then also with Principal Gooden, and we went and purchased just paper chef hats that had Ace, our nutrition mascot, on it. And what we did is we encouraged the kids to make healthy snacks when they go home. So we taught them how to do ants on a log. We made sheep out of cauliflower florets, and just little fun things that would help the kids maybe choose a better option once they got home instead of the traditional high caloric items that they may choose. So it was a really fun time, and the kids really they took pride in what they did, and they were able to show off their skills. So. Just real quickly, a financial update. I'm proud, very proud to report to you at the end of December, we are up about $50,000 in our return this year in food service over last year. My staff has worked incredibly hard to decrease their food costs and decrease the waste. As food costs continues to climb in the world, as you guys know, when you go out into to the grocery stores, we're really focusing on utilizing our specified products, and in turn, in doing that, we get rebates back from our major vendor. And we've also utilized our government commodities, which has helped. A case of peaches is $2.95 versus $41.35 from the vendor that we purchase it from. So our staff has really worked hard in taking the guidance of what we had given them and decreased our food cost. We're down about 3 cents a meal You think that we serve about 11,000 meals a day. That equates to a lot of money for us. So that my staff is really taking pride in that $50,000 increase over our return. And as you know, the flu's kind of hit us a little bit, as Mr. Hare talked about. In an ever-changing day when the kids are maybe not feeling breakfast or lunch, we still are increasing our meal count. So again, it's a testament to our staff because they're taking pride in what they do and the quality of food that they put out on a daily basis. And as you can see from our graph, breakfast and lunch meals are right around 200 meals per service day, up over last December. So we've, unfortunately, we've been struck, since we've been back from break, we've been struck with a declining meal count, and so we're working diligently with our staff to climb those counts back up. So again, staff is a great testament to providing our kids what they're wanting. So that's it. Any questions? Comments?
I always have a comment for you, don't I?
You do, but I love those comments.
You also did the Martin Luther King breakfast at Jeff High, and we had lots of compliments on how delicious it was, especially the French toast, whatever. Oh,
Yes,
that
French
couldn't
toast
have been good for
casserole.
you, but it was so good.
Just
And
don't tell our state auditors how many calories are in
okay,
that.
I don't think there were any. It was delicious.
Right.
Anyway, I just appreciate what you do, and this was people from all over that expressed how grateful they were and how good it was. So congratulations again.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Please pass on our congratulations to Ms. Cox and Ms. Lewis for their new status,
Absolutely.
Employee of the Month. So,
Thank you.
all right, thank you. All right, next up on student achievement is the alternative education update.
Yes, and this is kind of two parts, Board, if you will. The first part will be Clark County Middle High, and I know I'll speak for Ms. Schneff. We are so excited, so proud of both faculties. After Clark County Middle High will be Cord and Porter, and just so proud to have them here, and appreciate all of them kind of sitting through a lengthy board meeting to be here, but do have a wonderful presentation from both schools to talk about all the good things that they're doing for our kiddos. So very excited that they're here, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Griffith, I think, at this point in time. So.
Appreciate you having us here. When Dr. Mellon, Mr. Hare first came to me and asked me to make a presentation, I asked myself, what's the most efficient way to do this? And rather than me stand up here and babble, I thought I'd have some of my staff come up here and tell you a little about what they do. So Ms. Kendall, I think, is the first to present. She coordinates the alternative suspension site through Mr. Branch.
Good evening. Mr. Branch and I facilitate the suspension alternative site, and it has been in operation for 4.5 years. This site is utilized by all of Greater Clark County schools, and it offers a supervised, safe environment for kids who would normally be suspended out of school to stay in school suspension, but at a different site. We are in a partnership with Child Place and University of Louisville Kent School. These interns at Child Place offer workshops for our students on a daily basis, and I've listed the workshops that we are offering this semester. Mr. Branch and I also present 2 workshops per week on the civil rights. We also utilize Andy Reese, Clark County Tobacco Prevention Coordinator. She comes in and talks with the students who have been suspended for any tobacco-related deal. The next slide is the suspension alternative site for the last 4 years. AutoSum didn't quite do this right, but in the last 4 years, we have had over 1,600 students, and we have saved the suspension rate 5,225 days. This year, we're on a kind of an upswing. The first semester, we have had 916 days, which is a great amount headed our way. So, any questions?
Board?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kendall.
I think the next to present is Mr. Doug Murphy. He's in charge of the GED program, which is located at Clark County Middle High also.
Good evening. I brought some statistics, but it seems at this point just to be numbing. And so I will email you statistics if that would be a better service here. What I would like to talk about just for a minute is the program itself. I'm stationed at Clark County Middle High with Mr. Griffith, and our entire staff is over here. And I can tell you, honestly, this is a terrific staff, and I'm proud to be a part of it. I see the alternative school as sort of the last safety net in our Greater Clark family. And what's formerly known as the GED program, it's now called TASK, High School Equivalency, but it's the same basic thing. And inside our building, I'm sort of the last safety net within the safety net. Working in a building like Clark County Middle High is a huge challenge, but the challenge is met with huge rewards. I think anyone on our staff would say the same thing. It's not for everybody, but if you're there and you stay there, then you love it, and you love those kids. We all have to wear different hats. I do the adult ed. Ms. Hall is our secretary, who's our cook and bottle washer and nurse and guidance counselors, and we have a full-time guidance counselor, Mrs. Maxwell. But everyone has to multitask to make it work. No day is the same as the day before. It's always a huge challenge. You go home feeling really good about school, about these kids, their lives that are changing bit by bit. And so I want to thank the board and Dr. Mellon for your support. It is you've got something special with Clark County Middle High. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy.
The next is Ms. Stocks. She's going to give you a little review of how the mid-school program operates.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the behavior aspect. I came from River Valley 2.5 years ago, and I knew that we needed this program to make everything work. And we concentrate on the behavior aspect. We do all the same academics that we do at River Valley and Parkview and Charlestown and New Washer, wherever we get our kids from. And we started the first year, we didn't really have a program. We wanted to take the kids and bring them in and build relationships with them. And we set our goals and we meet with the kids, and we try to determine, when were they ready to go back, if they were ready to go back, what did they need from us, what did they need academically. And it was very difficult because they didn't really understand what we wanted from them or what they needed. So we got together and we did some research on schools that were like ours and the kids that were like ours. And we decided to do a level system. And so they come in on the first level, and we have 3 levels. And we measure them on an hourly and a daily and a weekly and a monthly basis. And we do that by letting them monitor their own behavior. So we give them a sheet, and they monitor the behavior with their teachers, and we have to sign off on them daily. And they have to get an 80% we use the Pride Initiative, and we take all the things that you want in the Pride characteristics, and they rate themselves. And they have to have an 80% success rate on a daily basis. And as they improve on their success rate, they move up the scale. So once they get to the highest level, then we consider them to go back to their home school if they're ready. And as we do that, we also incorporated the level system and the Pride system with our PBIS. And we married all 3 things together, and we came up with a system that we think is working beautifully. So we really love it there. The kids, the best part, I think, is that they monitor themselves, and then we approve what they monitor. I mean, we have to, put our stamp on it, but I really love it there. I'm staying. It's beautiful.
This is Mr. Gleason. He'll review the high school program.
My name is Steve Gleason. I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you tonight about our program. I'm one half of the instructional staff that teaches the high school. Mr. Scott Epley's the other half. Mr. Murphy summed it up really well. We all take a tremendous amount of pride in our building, not in our building, and what gets accomplished in our building, and our students that are supposed to that are really square pegs trying to be stuck through a round hole, you know, we take a lot of pride in what they are accomplishing. And it shows tonight. Mr. Griffith did not say we had to be here, and our whole staff is sitting there, even our secretary, which says a lot, I think. I mean, we are tremendously proud about what we do. We were told if we had something to do, go do it. And we all chose to come. We work in a nice little small group environment. The kids feel extremely safe when they are in our classroom. And I don't just mean physically, I mean mentally. They feel free to be themselves. They motivate themselves. Gosh, there's so much I could say about what we do that is good that there's just way too much to talk about. I mean, we give out weekly progress reports. I'll just hit a few of the brief ones here. We give a weekly progress report every week so every kid knows where they stand, how many classes they've had. They can actually compare themselves to other students to see if they're making the same progress other students are. And it's all anonymous. It's all posted on the walls, but it's done with the school numbers and things like that. So they want to live up to the expectations, or they want to have the successes that other students are having. So when they see names on that list, they want to make sure they're getting their name up there too. So they kind of motivate themselves. They realize that while they're there, if they're wasting time, they're wasting their time, their own time. So while they are there, they're working. They are working. They figure it out real quick that if I get on the ball, I can have some success. And those little successes just continually to build on each other and build on each other. And then Mr. Epley and I, we pat them on the back as much as we can. We try to tell them, look at what they did the day before. Say, yesterday you succeeded at getting this done. Great job. Today, let's try to get this done. And most of the times when we're able to talk to them like that, they do get that done. And they do move on to the next thing and get that done. And they leave feeling good about themselves, and we also leave feeling good about ourselves. It's one of the best, most rewarding teaching positions I've ever had in my life. I really enjoy it. Today was an exceptionally rewarding day. I walked out of there, worked with a couple girls, and they said, how come nobody ever taught it to me like that before? And I said, they did, you just weren't paying attention. So, you know, there's a lot of satisfaction out of working one-on-one with these kids. Got to stick to my list, because I could go on all day. There's a lot of neat things going on in that building. One thing we do is we give shout-outs. Any kid who does anything worthwhile, Mr. Epley and I try to keep track of it during the week, and we'll write out what we call a shout-out and let the kids know, you know, you're getting a shout-out for this good thing that you did. And then we turn those names in, and then every 4.5 weeks, we'll pull a name out of that hat, and Mr. Griffith provides us with some kind of worthwhile prize. A girl got tickets to go take somebody to the movies over Christmas, and she went and saw the Hunger Games, and she was so excited that she won that pass and that her name was drawn out of there. And it's a girl who always seems like she's bitter, but she's been smiling a lot. And these kids don't have a lot of successes in their life. So, you know, to have some of these kids who never really have educational success, to see them be successful, and for us to get to feel what they're feeling, it's just tremendous. I met a girl last year sitting right here, Claudia, was one of our students, came at the end of last year, didn't get a good chance to get to know her, but then this year, we just saw her blossom into a great, unique individual. And if it wasn't for Clark County Middle High, she wouldn't have had the opportunity to have the successes that she's had. And, you know, I've got a whole list of other things I could talk about, but I'm going to stop, because I could go on and on and on. We're working with kids that a lot of other school districts would just be sent out on the street, and they wouldn't know what to do. And, you know, I don't want to say we're saving a lot of kids, but we're making a lot of kids' lives a lot better. I'll leave it at that.
Great job.
Deanna, Ms. Maxwell's going to go over some of our statistics.
I get the board.
stuff. Okay, well, we're going to zip through some of these quickly before I talk about some other things, but we just wanted you to kind of have an understanding of where we've grown for the last few years. This is my first year at Clark County, and I don't plan on going anywhere for the next 42, so don't move me. But in the last 3 years, you can see how much we've grown. Our high school enrollment right now is at 128 students as of today. Last year, we had 150 go through our doors in the entire year, so we really are taking in a lot of kids. It gets quite crowded. Part of the reason that our enrollment is up, and as you can tell, our middle school's at 34, have gone through our doors this year. Last year, we had 50 through the entire year. So we have a lot more students coming. Part of that, I think, is because our students don't want to leave. And I think Claudia can tell you a little bit about that in a moment. But a lot of our students come to us, they've never felt successful before. They've never felt that they were wanted in a building before. They were at risk of dropout. And they come to us, and all of a sudden they're successful, and they have people that care about them. And if anything, you can tell we have a lot of passion, which is why we talk so much. But we have a lot of passion in our building. We're a family, and our kids feel that. And so once they're there, they don't want to leave. I have gotten 2 emails in the last 24 hours from principals in our district telling us that they have kids that are requesting to come back to us, that had come to us, completed our program. We recommended them to go back. They went back. They were there for a couple months and said, I want to go home. Can I just go back? So don't be surprised when we're here in a year saying, can you build us a building and give us 12 more staff? Because I think our children are realizing that it's an opportunity that a lot of kids want. I had a student we enrolled this week that had to beg her guidance counselor to be allowed to come to our building. They gave her some steps because she hadn't been getting any credits. She hadn't been coming to school. She was a truancy issue. They said, if you do this, this, and this and earn 7 credits, we'll let you go. And she did it just so she could come to our building again. So we've got a lot of kids that really will speak highly of it. If you want to flip to the next one. Attendance rate, it's pretty consistent throughout the years. Right now, we're down a little bit in our student attendance, partially because everybody's sick right now. And this is the lull of the year where everybody gets bored and they kind of start not coming and then they come back. Our next one is number of credits earned, and we're very proud of this one. Last year, we had 567 credits earned in our high school program. The year before that, it was 257. We're already at 343 as of semester 1, and I think I probably have about 30 sitting on my desk I haven't put in yet. So that number is actually a little bit higher. Our goal for the year is 800 credits through our high school program, and I think we'll be able to reach that. Our next slide is number of graduates. We had 14 graduates 2 years ago, 36 last year, and we've already graduated 7 this year. 2 of those were early graduates and 5 were fifth-year seniors that had to come back to us because they hadn't passed their ECAs. So they came back to study and then passed them recently, so they were able to graduate. Physical altercations. This is one that I seem to have to talk to parents about a lot when they come and enroll, is they're very nervous about our building. They don't know what it is. And I think that's something in our community that many people don't understand what we're there for. So they're very nervous about sending their child to the alternative school. And what we like to bring up to them is we don't have physical altercations. We don't have fights in our building. We haven't had to call the cops. So that's a wonderful thing that we can say to them, and it does seem to ease some of that anxiety. But I think that's a misperception in the community of what we are and what we stand for. Our next one is dropouts. We currently don't have any dropouts, which I think is huge for a building like ours. When you have a group of kids that the reason you're here is because you're a potential of a dropout. You're either your social being in the school, your academic performance, something is causing you to get to the point where the staff feels that you are at a dropout risk, and you come to us and then they're successful enough to stay in the program. Police interventions, again, was 9 2 years ago, and we're at 0 right now. And I'm going to let you talk in a second, but a couple things I just wanted to mention is that I know that's a lot of data, and those are numbers, but I invite you to come to our building. Please come visit us anytime. You don't even have to tell us when you're coming. But until you walk in our school and you meet our students and you hear their stories, it's not going to make sense. And I think all of us are so passionate. We could talk for so long because the stories these kids come with, every single one of them has a story. They're not your typical Johnny Smith who lives down the street and has his 2-parent home and comes up riding in his wonderful car. These are kids that come from some backgrounds that none of us have experienced before. So for us to take those students in and to make them part of our family and to make them successful, it's no wonder they don't want to leave. Our job basically is to find out what are the obstacles they have to overcome. Every one of our kids had to overcome an obstacle to get to us in the first place. Something has happened in their life, whether it be that they're pregnant or they've had a baby and they have 2 babies at home. We have a couple like that. They don't have transportation. They can't get to school. Their parents have dropped out. They have to work to support their family. These are all things that we hear on a daily basis. And so our job is to find out, what is it that's keeping you from being successful? What is it that you weren't able to make it in a traditional environment? And then it's our job to figure out how to overcome those obstacles. So that's what we spend every minute of our day doing. So we're very, very proud of what we want to do here. And Mr. Griffith is going to introduce one of our students who so wonderfully has sat for a long time for us tonight. But we felt like we can stand here all day long and talk, but until you hear from our kids, it's really hard to get an understanding of what we do. So.
Hey, I just wanted to introduce, this is Claudia Mills. Teresa, Dr. Mullen met her last fall. She came to us and had, I won't say that. She had 20 credits when she came. Within 9 weeks, she'd earned 21 credits, passed her ECAs, graduated, 17 years old, going into the military, right? And I just felt compelled that you should meet her because she's broken every record that Clark County Middle High School's ever had.
Thank you. A little background, I was a transfer from New Albany High School. I got into an altercation with another student trying to aid one of my friends. And honestly, when I heard alternative school, I got scared. I thought it could be a bad step. I might have done something completely wrong that I shouldn't have. But when I arrived there and I met these wonderful people that have helped me throughout my learning path, I realized that fight had helped me for the better. It's a lot more different when you're in a classroom with a teacher that has been with more than 100 students in a single day than to be with a teacher in a classroom that can help you one-on-one that's only seen about 30 students in a day. You get more understanding on the subject that you're working on, and it can help you succeed in your future. Honestly, I've never had more people believe in me besides my family, and when I arrived here, I've got another set of family that has believed in me and has helped me succeed, and because of that, I've been an early graduate.
Hey, we've made a lot of progress, I think, as a school. We're not where we want to be yet, but I do think we're moving in the right direction, and I'm completely confident that we're going to get to the point where I think we need to be. So I appreciate you having us here this evening. I'm grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, an example of, yes. Yeah. You know, our mission is that we're going to help every student graduate and be accepted to a post-secondary opportunity. We're going to provide every means possible to help every child succeed, regardless of their circumstance. And this is living proof. And you're going to have another example here in just a second. You know, there's no place I've ever been that's had such a committed group of adults to kids who need it the most. And between Clark County Middle High and Cord and Porter, I couldn't be more proud of what they get done. And tremendously valuable aspect of our whole school corporation. So I'm just had to
May I
say.
say something before we move on?
Yeah, absolutely.
When Dr. Mellon invited me to visit your school, I had a little bit of background in alternative programs in another life. And I told him when we left how impressed I was by what I saw going on in that building. And this man right here is a perfect fit for that building.
Mm-hmm.
He knew every student, and that's what we need.
Yeah. Great job. Yep.
You know, great job, Clark County. I mean, I look at you guys and I see 3 former special educators. So I'm thinking, all right. No, really, it sounds terrific, and I know the good work that you do. In the interest of time, I'm going to turn this over to Laura Morris. And before I do that, I just want to say Thanks to Bunny Nash Gardner, who for many years was principal of Corden Porter. And now, thanks to Laura Morris, who just continues that tradition with great promotion of Corden Porter. We have an excellent program for some of the hardest to serve kids in our district, so, and actually in our county. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
And I will say that's well said, Dr. Mellon, because I think it's important for us to note that these programs are unique to our state. Our county has 2 programs that not a lot of counties have, so I think that's very important to note. So, like Ann says, I never turn down an opportunity to promote my Corden Porter All-Stars. Corden Porter is a unique program, and I know we have a lot of our friends in this room. The most important part of our program is the importance of human interaction, that we have relationships with our students, and we use those relationships to teach our kids and to have positive behavior and academic outcomes. Some of the strategies that we use, I have some of them noted up here, but I have to give props to Mr. Santry, who's not here. He's been out of our building. He had surgery. But my favorite thing that he does, and this is a good example because this is what it's all about reframing how you teach kids to work with their behavior. And he teaches our younger students to use their lighthouse. And a lighthouse shines that beacon of light to warn ships that there's going to be rocky shore. And he teaches our kids to use your lighthouse. Before a problem arises, before that boat hits the rocks, what can you do to warn people that there's trouble ahead? And that's just one of the examples that our awesome teachers use to help our students learn how to address their behavior. Once we build those relationships, next, the focus is on achievement. And once we've built those relationships, trust exists. We know that unless there's a relationship, there's not going to be any learning. So those relationships have to be there for learning to take place. Then, once we have those relationships, we work on their individual needs. So what do they need? We added Read 180 this year, which we have seen a lot of improvement in our reading, all the way up to if our students can graduate early, then we look at Plato classes and adding those to their schedule. And I have my brag board on the next slide, but on our last ECA, we focus a lot on growth because our students come to us so far below grade level. So just on the last ECA, on our retesters only in the winter, 89% growth in English and 33% growth in algebra. So that's huge. So we're making up years of deficits in months. So it's really cool to see. All right. The ultimate goal for us is to return our students to their home school. So these are some of our awesome students that are either in transition or have graduated our program. And it's important to note, I have our teachers collaborating on the right because you will hear our students talk here in a minute. None of this is possible without them. I mean, they work so hard and efficiently and effectively to see we only have our students for this many hours in a day, so how can we maximize that time to get maximum learning? So here's my brag board. All right, so just last year alone, we had 4 students return full-time. These are our full-time students to their home school. We have 2 more that are in transition as we speak. 7 students that are on our highest level of Discover. That means they're eligible for transition. Not all of our students will transition back either because of their age or because some parental influence. One of our recent program graduates, he just started full-time at Clarksville in January. He was the October Clarksville High School Student of the Month. That's awesome. And the next statistic is very important because you have to remember that our students are Tier 3 behavior students. 50% of Court and Porter students received 0 or 1 referral last quarter, so that's awesome. And then our star, once again, here's the growth. 72% of our students had growth in language, 74% of growth in math, and I'm talking years, like over a year's growth. And then we had 3 of our fabulous students pass the English ECA in December.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And as of yesterday, we learned that Kevon won the Martin Luther King speech contest at JHS. Wow. Another program graduate. Just transition back to. So I could sit up here all day and talk, but I'm going to let my students tell you what's made a difference to them.
That itself right there, and I do see a lot of that with
He said helping others.
that I see with you too is, quite often there's an underdog in the situation. You're the first person that goes to pick that person up or help that person out, or even give them some personal advice that will help them be that person. This morning, they're a new student, you're the first and only person that I heard that actually went up and introduced yourself, but it says, and it goes wrong, really good. Some things that I used to do that here was hitting, kicking, tearing up stuff. Now I'm just calling when I get mad. I just take deep breaths and get on with it.
Get on.
It's way better than last year. Reporter has made a difference because I've been here for a few years and I think I've matured a little bit and it helped me just get on with my life and help get a better future.
I've had a good time at Coca-Cola and that I see more in my academics because my teachers have helped me through my hard times and the good times, and the kids they're not very impatient, so we keep having focus.
The things that helped me be a successful Court reporter is just being consistent with behavior. All the teachers are included with you and they help you more when you're in class if you need help. That's really what improved me, because last year I didn't really do a lot of work, but I've been doing good this year. They're all involved in like if something's wrong with you or you're not having a good day, they always ask you, so you feel like you're welcome here.
That is Court and Porter.
Yeah. You know, Board, one thing that I asked Mrs. Morris, because the ability that the staff at Court and Porter has to work with some of the most challenging individuals, students that we have, just in terms of behavior. There's a magic that goes on at Court and Porter that I witnessed right from the beginning.
That might be our theme next year,
Magic, the magic. And but I asked them to host some of our administrators and counselors because, and the same holds true at Clark County Middle High now. I think that for our teachers and administrators, sometimes these kids in the regular school environment, they reach a point of no return, and you feel like you just have to get rid of those kids from those regular environments. Yeah. Well, magic then occurs at these two institutions. And now these kids are transitioning back. The hardest point then is they want to go back because they had so much success and they felt so loved. But what I'm saying is that these are models in the state, and you can hear it, there's nothing that sells anything better more than the students themselves. So I just appreciate the leadership, of Laura and Jeff, and then the staff's commitment and heart and soul for these kids. So thanks for your patience tonight, and thank you for being patient for this opportunity. I know it's been a long meeting.
Yeah.
I know we got to have lunch a couple times at your wonderful school and have lunch. They allowed us to have lunch with some of those students that you saw up there, especially the one little guy. And I mean, they'll ask you some real important questions. And I just enjoyed it so much. And again, the teachers are wonderful, but our principal is just, she's the best. She's had a good role model, her daddy, who I worked with for years. And so congratulations to all of you.
Well, thank you all. If I've hadn't learned anything else, it's that I can just take deep breaths and get on with it, so.
That's all it takes.
But, a great job. We're very proud of your efforts, your leadership, and your commitment, and thanks for coming out tonight. It means a lot when we see the entire staff show up, so great job.
Just get on.
All right, I guess we'll get on with it now to the consent agenda. We have 6 items tonight. I take all those at once.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Gilkey, and thank you, Ms. Kraft. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Be 6-0. Thank you. Gifts to buildings. Ms. Kraft, are you equipped to take us through gifts to buildings tonight?
Well, it looks like we're down a little bit on money, but it's very appreciated. Anything that we get, and it shows us that the community cares about us, and it looks like Wilson Elementary did a really good job. So we just appreciate anything people can give us monetarily, we can use every time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Need a motion?
Motion to accept.
Thank you, Ms.
I move to accept gifts to buildings. Sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Gilkey.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, any questions, comments? Not? All in favor? Be 6-0. Next is the action items. First one is the conflict of interest disclosure statements for board members.
That's correct. Good evening again. You all were asked, and it's required by law, that you complete a conflict of interest disclosure statement. And then another component of the law is that those disclosure statements need to be approved by the board in a public meeting. So this evening, your disclosure statements have been provided, and I'm asking you to vote in mass this evening so we can speed the process along, with the acknowledgement that will go on the record and in the minutes that you are abstaining on your own disclosure statement. So my recommendation and the superintendent's recommendation is that you approve the conflict of interest disclosure statements for each individual board member.
All right.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. Questions? All in favor? Be 6-0. Next, I'd like to take the next 2 items together, items 2 and 3. It's policy for discipline and dismissal. One of them is for staff, and the other certified and classified. So I'd like to take those together.
That's correct, and we did bring this to you for first reading. The superintendent is recommending the approval of both of these policies as presented for second reading. And just to let you know, we took the certified staff policy to corporation discussion with our Greater Clark Educational Association. The items on the policy that are highlighted in yellow are ones that were provided in the first reading. The items that are in blue are items that we added based on our discussion with incorporation discussion. And basically that was on the letter of expectations, which is the new step 1 in our discipline policy in both classified and certified, is that after 365 days of that being in an administrator's file, the employee can come forward to that administrator and ask that it be removed, basically destroyed. And we put language in there that said the building administrator will remove the document upon request, provided that no further disciplinary actions have been documented with respect to that issue. And so that was part of our negotiations with incorporation discussion. So at this time, we're recommending approval of both of these policies.
All right, thank you.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Kraft. Thank you, Ms. Zolman. Any questions, comments from Ms. Lewis on those 2 items? If not, all in favor? Be 6-0. Thank you. Next item is the policy 4141.1 military service credit. This is just a first reading tonight.
That's correct. This is first reading, but just to give you some background, the state of Indiana has allowed for military service credit up to 4 years to be credited to the teacher's salary schedule if the individual went to college first and then was inducted into an active duty in the military. And that's been in place for quite a while. In fact, if you'll see, 1989 was when the policy was originally adopted. In discussions with our Greater Clark Education Association, our teachers union, we were asked to consider making some adjustments to that. And also, we feel very strongly in our school community about military service and what people do to help protect our country in general. So the first reading, you'll see the highlights and the strike-throughs that are making the changes. And the key change is that if someone, and we would begin this back with the start of the 14-15 school year, any teacher who has completed an approved bachelor's degree in education/teaching before, during, or after induction into active duty military service shall be entitled to a salary credit for such service. So we want to recognize them back to the start of this school year. Any new employee that comes in that has their military service that they did either before, during, or after to be given a salary credit up to 4 years on the salary schedule. They'll certainly have to provide proper documentation, and on second reading, we would ask that you make this retroactive back to the start of this school year. We think it's the right thing to do, and it's something that you all can consider. If you have suggestions about the language, shoot me an email, but it's no action needed, first reading. Any
Okay.
questions?
All right, next item is rescind policy 4242, long-term leaves.
Correct. We did major revisions a while back on policy 4250, leaves of absence, which addressed all types of different leaves. And it was done about the same time that we did the changes in the attendance policy. But this one was one that was kind of languishing out there, and it's only applicable to classified staff. As you see, it's in the 4200 policy component. It's just a one-liner. It was adopted in 72 and revised in 91. It's really not applicable because this type of leave is addressed in the existing policy. So we're recommending approval of rescinding this policy at this time. One reason we're not waiting to rescind it when we rescind all the policies with the Neola adoption is it does create some questions in our HR department. So we've been asked to take care of getting rid of this at this time. So this is the superintendent's recommendation that you rescind this policy.
All right, thank you.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. Need a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Gilkey. Any questions? All in favor? Be 6-0. Thank you. Next item is the brokerage account for stock transfer.
That's correct. And this is very exciting. We had an individual whose husband taught for Greater Clark. They put together a revocable living trust, and when Miss Dorothy Ross passed, she's the widow of Glenn Ross, the trust had a provision that the IBM Corporation stock that they held at the time that Ms. Ross passed be donated or be transferred to Charlestown High School for the benefit of Charlestown High School. In order, we've been working on this about a year to try to get this taken care of, and in order to get the money in Greater Clark's possession so it can be used for Charlestown High School's benefit, we need a brokerage account established. And we've worked with Kevin Bainline in the past in our 403B accounts. Edward Jones has done a nice job working with us. He certainly has been very helpful in helping us work through this process to get this stock transfer. But we have to have a brokerage account set up, have the money signed off on, and then transferred into this brokerage account, converted to cash, and then transferred to Greater Clark, because we don't deal in stocks in public education. But it's a nice benefit. It's certainly, we have some ideas about usage as we head down the road, but tonight we would need your approval of this resolution authorizing the brokerage agreement. And also, as a component of this, you would authorize the treasurer and deputy treasurer of the school corporation to sign all necessary documents to set up this account and to complete the deposit from the proceeds of the sale of stock back into Greater Clark's funds.
Okay.
So the superintendent is recommending this approval at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Gilkey. And Ms. Kraft, I think I saw you do a second there. Any questions?
It is the Edward Jones, is that an agent in Jeffersonville or?
Edward Jones is the investment company. Kevin Bainline is the individual broker that works with Edward Jones. And so the.
And his office is where?
It's over by the Walmart in Clarksville.
Okay. Because there is a Edwards Jones office in Charlestown.
Right. We have worked with Kevin and we're familiar with him and he's worked through the process with us. So that's why we're recommending that we stay with Kevin, because he's very familiar with what we've been doing.
Further questions?
It won't be an account that will be open for any length of time. I mean, once we get the executor to sign off on the paperwork to pull the stock out of its existing account into this account, then we'll convert it to cash and it'll come back. So we don't, I mean, I would be surprised if this brokerage account was open 30 days.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All in favor? Be 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the state high-ability grant. Dr. Hartledge.
Hello. I'm asking you tonight to accept the grant in the amount of $64,383. This money is the main source of funding for our identified highly abled students in grades K through 12. The grant pays for an assortment of things, but primarily the required testing in order to identify students, as well as materials and teacher training throughout the year to support those students.
Thank you.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Thank you, Ms. Perkins. Any questions, comments? All in favor? 6-0. Thank you. Next is the mileage reimbursement. Dr. Dykle.
Yes, there's no action required on this. It's just to let you know where we're at. The Internal Revenue Service announced that the standard mileage rate will increase to 57.5 cents per mile for all business miles driven starting January 1st, 2015. Current rate is 56 cents per mile, and this is the rate that we'll use to reimburse all of our employees when they turn in a mileage claim. So it's just for information only.
Okay. Next is the cancellation of outstanding checks.
Yes, Indiana Code 5-11-10.5-2 states all warrants and checks drawn on public funds of a political subdivision that are outstanding and unpaid for a period of 2 years or more as of December 31st of 2014 are void. No individual bank, trust company, building and loan association, or other financial institution may honor cash or accept for payment or deposit any such warrant or check which may be presented for payment. You have a list here of 3. Our list is going down because we're paying so many electronically now. What we will do is we will reissue the Greater Clark Service Association for $1,709.70. The other 2 will just absorb because they're under $25. So,
okay.
Need permission to do that.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Kraft. Have a second. Thank you, Ms. Zolman. Questions, comments? All in favor? Be 6-0. Thank you. And the last item is the year-end appropriation transfers.
Yes, this is something we do every year. State Board of Accounts requires that all accounts have a positive balance at year end. Since actual spending during the year does not perfectly align with the way our budget is adopted and estimated, accounts will have more or less spent than anticipated. The approved resolution permitted the CFO to make transfers between those accounts within a fund while staying within the budget order. So we're just asking you to go ahead and approve this so that I can move money around during the course of the year.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. Have a second. Thank you, Ms. Kraft. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Be 6-0. Thank you. Dr. Dykle? All right, we don't have any discussion items tonight. We do have, well, let me just ask, Ms. Perkins, any reports or requests for reports? No? Ms. Zolman? Ms. Kraft? Mr. Hall?
No, thank you.
Ms. Gilkey?
One quick report, just really quick. Mark, myself, Teresa Zolman, and Teresa Perkins all had an opportunity to attend and I'm sorry, and Travis and Kim and Dr. Mellon, we all attended the effective governance seminar that the ISBA put on last night. It was a very good seminar, and the biggest thing I want to make sure the rest of you know is that there's some really exciting changes coming down the pike, specifically with regard to technology. Renee can probably tell you the conferences from now moving forward are all going to be a different format, electronically driven versus, paper, and a lot of exciting changes. Also lobbying. We've already submitted a couple of our own bills for this legislative session. We're getting a lot more information about the bills that are being presented and voted on, and so there's some really good things going on. I will make sure to keep you all abreast. So I just wanted to make sure you all knew that. And also, as a report, and Ms. Kraft mentioned it earlier, but one of our senators, Ron Grooms, is having a couple of town hall meetings. It's an opportunity for us to actually comment and as well ask questions. A lot of this whole stack of bills is all related to education. So I would say it'd be pretty important for us to go and have a presence. There's one January 31st at the Town of Clarksville Town Hall from 9 to 11. That's not this Saturday, but the following Saturday. And then he's having another one at the Jeffersonville City Hall, February 7th from 9 to 11 as well. So 2 different opportunities. I plan on attending the Clarksville session on the 31st, but I wanted to make sure you all were aware. That's it.
All right, thank you. Next one is the annual committee appointments. I'll just walk through these really quick. Jeffersonville Redevelopment is going to be Jerry White. Charlestown Redevelopment's Tony Hall. Superintendent Parent Advisory Committee is Teresa Zolman. ISBA Legislative Committee Representative Nancy Kraft. ISBA Nomination Committee, Tony Hall. Finance Committee Representative is myself and Jerry White. Education Foundation Rep is Teresa Perkins. Strategic Planning Committee Representative will be Christina Gilkey and Teresa Perkins. Insurance Committee is going to be Christina Gilkey. Bargaining Negotiation Representative will be myself and Tony Hall. Multicultural Diversity Committee will be Nancy Kraft. College and Career Readiness will be Teresa Zolman. Joint School Board Representative, and this is a voluntary type deal. It's not really an appointment, but it's going to be Teresa Zolman, Christina Gilkey, and myself. If we do have a River Ridge established, Tony Hall will take that spot, and if we have a Clark County Commissioners established, that will be myself. So, any questions on any of those? All right. Oh, okay.
I went.
The College of Career Readiness.
All right, so you're on.
And I will be there. Add me to the College and Career Readiness Committee.
All right. All right, so we have no public comments on non-agenda items tonight?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on through, I'll move on through board comments. Ms. Perkins?
Just appreciated the opportunity to go last night to the Effective Governance Conference, and I appreciated the fellowship with the other board members and the administrators that went.
Zolman?
I learned a lot last night. I appreciate that I got to go to that. And I also want to say, after 38 years of teaching, today is the first time that a staff made me tear up. They were excellent. I hope to visit both of those schools.
Okay. Ms. Kraft?
Yes, I just have a couple of things. You've probably already read them, but one about the coverage of the NAACP banquet at Jeff, and the other one The other one is a newspaper article, and it's headed, "School Board Members Dedicated to Pupils," and it talks about how good we are. So, do you want to read that so you can copy it?
He's got it.
That's allowed, though, here. so.
Really. It's so rare that we get someone saying we're doing a good job. Okay, that's it. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hall?
No, thank you.
All right, Ms. Gilkey?
Happy birthday, Sandy. I greatly appreciate hearing from our alternative schools. And when Teresa gets scheduled to go, I want to go too.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'd like to put that on our calendar soon. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Even though the man last night told us not to go into classrooms, but
Yeah.
we'll sneak.
We'll
in.
coordinate, we'll coordinate that like we do with other events for you.
Well, I'm not going to delay it. I'm not going to delay it any further, so it's up to you, Dr. Mellon.
No, thank you very much. I think we presented a lot of information tonight, and I know it was more time-consuming than normal, but also I think all the reports are just reflect all the work that's being done, all the good things that are happening in Greater Clark. So thank you, Board, for your support and for your patience tonight.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Ms. Kraft.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. All in favor? 6-0. Good night.